Is Senator Bernie Sanders hurting the Democrats' chances of winning control over Congress? Let's have a bunch of centrist neoliberals and maybe some right-wingers on a panel to discuss how, yes, it turns out the left flank that has all of the momentum, the left flank that has all of the capacity to fill up fucking crowded arenas, the left flank that has all the fucking small donors, that left flank that's breathing life back into the fucking party that doesn't deserve to have its reputation cleansed. That left flank we have to fight back against all damn day.
Has backed over 90 candidates, and according to his team, 42 of them have won their races, including 10 out of 16 federal candidates. Here's a look at some of them on your screen. There's some controversial ones that have caused some significant blowback within the Democratic ranks, including a critical Michigan House race there, Congressman in the Michigan 7th Congressional District, a battleground district. That one is William Lawrence there. That's a big fight that's happening, will happen in that August 4th primary. Hakeem Jeffries had this phone call with Bernie Sanders and along with Gregory Meeks, a New York Democrat, on it. Meeks told us Sanders seemed not to care after they were raising concerns about meddling in the primaries.
Yeah. I mean, that is Bernie Sanders. I mean, a lot of this, as I was looking at some of the rallies there from Bernie Sanders, you're reminded of 2016, this real force that Bernie Sanders was in his race against Hillary Clinton. And that is kind of the energy. A lot of these Democrats that we see running now sort of became Bernie Sanders Democrats during that race. And so you see this come to fruition here. In Michigan, one of, I think, the real worries is that Abdul El Sayed is maybe not as a competitive a candidate against the Republican who did really well last go round. He used to be a fellow contributor here at CNN. Mike Rogers, very telegenic. I think he lost by something like 9,000 votes or something like that. And so there is real worry. But you know, this is about attitude, right? It's about passion. It's about media.
To be fair, didn't you say that the left flank were unseating Democrats in fortress seats? It makes sense for them to start fighting back if they're losing numbers. That is just politics. Yeah. But a normal party structure would actually, well, the Democrats are not a normal party. But if it was a normal party, you would have the most fucking leftist candidates on the most leftist districts. You wouldn't have annoying right-wing centrists in the most left districts. Okay? A national party that is a normal, competent, real party would literally actively put the most visible, the most popular, the most far left people into the most far left seats. Okay? And then they would run more reasonable and more sensible moderates, I guess, in districts that make sense for that kind of attitude. But we don't fucking do that in the United States of America. Democrats get entrenched power from their fucking safe, their castles, their strongholds. Okay? Party establishment want to hold on to power. Why did Trump go after Massey and Marjorie Taylor Greene? Was he worried a Democrat would win the district? Of course not. It's the same thing for Clyburn endorsing Cuomo or Tandem freaking out about every lefty anywhere is job security. Electability is a genuine concern, but that's not really what motivates this crowd. And they're not really even very good at it. A perfect example of how propaganda works at the story framing level. Corporate Dems have spent a decade buying primaries for corporate candidates, and the party has seen an epic loss of power, and yet there are never TV segments about them hurting Dems' chances of winning. Yeah. When is the last time you heard about how fucking angry the voters are at the centrists within the halls of power? They literally, bro, New York is a closed primary. New here, but you literally contradict yourself in the first 30 seconds. Wait, what? How? Explain yourself. New York is a closed primary system. Who's voting for these candidates? It's fucking Democrats voting for these candidates. But if you were to literally listen to the media, you would think that aliens were fucking spawned into these districts from the outside to cynically vote for these fucking candidates to get Republicans elected. It's like, no, dude, those are your own voters. They treat those seats like fiefdoms, though. He said he's scared of losing his job. No. Then you went on a rant and said, yeah, it's about job security. Wait, what? I think you misunderstood what I was talking about. Yes, that's what it is. Job security for Neera Tanden relies on her constantly fucking attacking the left flank. What's the contradiction? Even what your statement is not contradictory. I'm so confused. Yeah, the fourth most and fifth most popular active politician in the U.S. are self-identified Democratic socialists. The idea that they are responsible for broad disdain for the Democratic Party is empirically false and objectively hilarious and desperate. Possibly. I thought you were started by saying it wasn't about job security. Then you ended up saying, yes, it's job security. No, it is job security. Of course it's job security for them. I always say it's about job security. Anyway, but they never, like, Dems in the media never fucking criticize establishment Democrats, okay? Mainstream outlets never criticize establishment Democrats for creating an environment that has allowed the voters to come to terms with on their own that establishment Dems are not fucking working. Anyway, let's continue with this fucking video.
Training in some ways. I mean, if you think about somebody like Abdul El Sayed, also a fellow CNN contributor at some point years
before he
ago.
ran for governor and lost in the gubernatorial primary.
And so there is a sort of energy and polish, I think, that some.
He said the party won't lose the seat, but the centrists can lose their job. Yes. I want the centrists to lose their jobs. Why? Did y'all hear about Vladimir Putin opening the oldest vault to reveal images of biblical figures? They all black, every single one. Why are you sending me this OG meme?
Of these candidates are bringing, that the more sort of centrist candidates aren't really bringing that, even though in this race it isn't even a generational divide in the way that we've seen some other races. It's more sort of an ideological and stylistic divide.
Yeah, and an electability argument really at the heart of it. And just look at how some of the blowback that he's getting and the responses that we got. And we asked so many members about Bernie Sanders' role in all of this. Josh Gottheimer, a pro-Israel Democrat from New Jersey, said the DSA, which Bernie's a part of, is trying to hijack the Democratic Party, and people don't want that. Hillary Skolton, who's in Michigan supporting Haley Stevens, said the Graham Plattner situation should be a huge warning sign to a lot of voters about what that stamp of approval might mean. And Ro Khanna, who is a Bernie backer, said that Bernie is just as popular as, say, the Pope and Obama and Bernie. So those are three people who are perhaps the most popular when it comes to public figures. And I asked Bernie Sanders about this. Are you making things harder for the Democrats to win back power in November? But are you making it harder in some ways to win the majority? Say what happened in Maine.
I think in fact the candidates we are supporting are candidates who are representing working people, and I think it's long time overdue for the Democratic Party to stop worrying about their wealthy campaign funders and stop worrying about the needs of working people.
Was it a mistake in Maine?
I don't think people have really made the forceful case outside of his identity, to be honest with you. And I don't accept that. I don't accept
being Muslim or?
Yeah.
Yeah. I sometimes wonder if we should do that. If we should like fucking fight fire with fire a little bit. You know what I mean? Yeah, why bother having primaries at all? Let's let AIPAC choose the candidates from both parties and cut out the middleman. Scandalizing weighing in on primaries rather than letting Dem leadership handpick nominees. I love these completely manufactured stories. Not letting Jeffries and Schumer decide nominees is forcing them to divert previous precious cash to primaries instead of spending it to fight the GOP. Hey, here's a fucking idea. Don't spend any cash on your incumbents and let your incumbents run and fundraise on their own. Let your incumbents run on their record and see how well they do. Why are you spending any cash on defending those seats? If you got a fucking reliable incumbent, you don't need to fucking fundraise for them. You don't need to divert resources to your dusty ass, old ass, calcified ass, mummified ass fucking incumbents. What are we doing? It's crazy. Oh my God. Here's another 874-year-old that we have to dump at least a couple mil in the direction of because now they're getting unseated by a 30-year-old. You know what I mean? It's crazy.
She's referring there, of course, to Abdul al-Sayed about why she thinks that people have not made the case against him. But Bernie Sanders is totally unapologetic about his role in all of this.
He definitely is. And having covered and watched his political activity for some time, he and his people will make the argument, he kind of made it there too, that when it comes to the electability argument, he would argue that they are backing candidates who are electable because they speak to this really anger among the working class and this anger among voters about the fact that the system is not working for them. And obviously, Bernie would bristle at any comparisons to Donald Trump. But the fact is that they do both kind of speak to this really angry electorate that believes that the current system is not working for them. But of course, if you look at the general election and if you look at kind of the Chuck Schumer, Hakeem Jeffries, that wing of the party, they would say, look at the candidates that have gotten us trouble, particularly Graham Plattner in Maine. And these are races where we cannot afford to have any sort of problematic candidates. I would also point out that Graham Plattner is not Abdul al-Sayed. I mean, obviously, Graham Plattner had a litany of personal problems. He is no longer a candidate. The main issue with al-Sayed right now is a lot of his policy positions, and that is obviously a debate, a substantive debate that the Democratic Party can have. But for Chuck Schumer and the broader Democratic Party, every seat matters so much in the race to regain Senate control. And for Michigan, they say this is not a good bet for us. We're going to stick with Haley Stevens because she is the better bet in the general election.
I think one of the funniest arguments that these guys are presenting is that Haley Stevens is anything without $50 million of AIPAC money. Like, fucking Haley Stevens, we just need to let her be the candidate because she's clearly the stronger candidate. It's like, stronger how? Why is the candidate that can't fucking fundraise as well as Abdul the stronger candidate? She has no base. She has no real excitement on the ground. She has no on-the-ground mobilization at all. She literally just has $50 million in outside expenditures from super PACs. What happens when they decide Mike Rogers is the same empty suit that is easily bought and sold? What then? What happens when the corporations decide, it doesn't matter who wins this race? How do you make sure that Haley Stevens, if the cash flow diminishes, especially with AIPAC, which is the biggest donor, right? AIPAC is the biggest donor. Who do you think MAGA-backed AIPAC is going to go for? Who do you think AIPAC is going to fund in the general? Let's say something unbelievably unfortunate happens and Haley Stevens wins the primary. It's not going to happen. We're going to make sure that it's not going to happen. But let's say that takes place. Haley Stevens just voted against cutting aid to Israel against the wishes of her constituents. What makes you think she'll fight for Michiganders in the Senate or even be able to defeat Mike Rogers when she can't stand on her own without $34 million of AIPAC money? What fucking happens when AIPAC goes, yeah, Mike Rogers is probably a more reliable pro-Israel vote for us. So we're taking $34 million, chopping more than half of her direct campaign fundraising, which she hasn't even fundraised for. She just fundraises for that by going,
Israel comes to me in my dreams.
What then? And where's Dave Weigel's assessment? I've lost it because I had the Dave Weigel. Does anyone have the Dave Weigel link? I really wanted to. I wanted to read that because that was a good readout. Okay, so here it is. The long Democratic story since 2016 is that the party leadership getting weaker and less popular. Sanders and his movement get among Dems get more popular. The most successful period for the anti-left faction, AIPAC, DMFI, etc., was 2021 to 2023, when Biden had won and was doing a lot of stuff, and the left liked it, and Bernie supported it as well. So anti-left faction could beat Nina Turner with ads about her trashing Biden in 2020. They could beat Aaron Regenberg with a candidate who highlighted all of his work for Biden, etc. The 2024 election discredited the anti-left faction. The centrist faction lost all of its gusto because they lost. They were moderate. They campaigned with Liz Cheney. They refused to talk about Israel in terms that the public demanded. They dropped their anti-ICE sentiment. They were pro-ICE, objectively pro-ICE, openly. They never talked about like trans people or anything like that. They moderated to the center and it didn't fucking work and they lost. This was huge. The electability argument only works if you fucking win elections. If you lose elections twice to Donald Trump in spectacular fashion, as the moderate, as the centrist, as the reasonable centrist, all of a sudden, all those people that were leaning into you because they believe the electability argument, they're not going to believe you anymore. They fumbled the ball against Trump again, as Dave reports, and no one in that faction is as strong, popular, or good at building crowds as Sanders. Add to this that Obama could be, but he doesn't want to engage in primaries, and that a lot of New York Dems specifically wrecked their credibility by endorsing Cuomo in 2025. They look like retreat losers who should just let Sanders et al. Run the ball. Yeah, when you see Neera Tanden depict herself as an expert on electability, please remember that Tanden was one of the architects of the Hillary Clinton 2008 campaign that explicitly insisted that Barack Obama could not win a general election. Yep. What's especially interesting about Michigan Senate is that Stevens is actually trying to run on the establishment Dem record. Auto rescue, Obamacare. Hey, it wasn't just a decade of not delivering for the working class. And the rebuttal is, look, where the money's come from her to say that, not she's, oh yeah. And the rebuttal is, look at where the money's coming from for her to say that, not that she's wrong and Obama sucked. Yeah. This person says, also, AIPAC and other super PACs are basically how our campaign is funded, and there's zero guarantee in the general she will have that money spout, which is a huge concern about electability. Yeah, that's been an interesting discourse. If AIPAC wins her the primary and then sits out the general, how many Democrats are going to want to be everything on AIPAC? Here.
Think there should be conditions on the aid the United States sends to Jerusalem and Tel Aviv?
Absolutely not. I'm not for
Israel comes to me in my dreams.
Conditions, particularly in this circumstance. That's what detractors of Israel are pushing for. And we have a country,
Israel comes to me in my dreams.
A very close ally.
Israel comes to me in my dreams.
Of the United States, the only democracy in the Middle East.
Israel comes to me in my dreams.
That has been attacked, that's in the middle of a war, that is reckoning with their own civilians being taken hostage and put into terrible, terrible situations.
Israel comes to me in my dreams.
We have a Iran, knocking on the door, chomping at the bits here to see this destruction.
By the way, notice how she's not presenting herself as this fucking yokel with this like aggressive, quote unquote, fake Michigan accent that no Michigander I've ever encountered says is authentic to Michigan. I've been thinking about this a lot. And I think Haley Stevens is very intelligent. Okay? I think Haley Stevens is specifically beefing up the I'm a yokel who loves Michigan for one reason and one reason only. Her accent and her entire outfit, her entire persona is a love letter to Michigan. This is her own assessment, right? This is the way she wants to present herself. So whenever she's asked hard questions, not this, by the way, because back then this wasn't a hard answer for her. But if she were to be asked the same exact question now, which she was a couple days ago, she just goes, oh, yeah, well, I love Michigan. You already know. I'm just, there's a lot of great people in Michigan who, in our communities. I love our communities in Michigan. And then she never answers the fucking question. And we haven't noticed this. She is such a fucking politician, dude. I think she hasn't been hit on this as much because we're so focused on her like weird like yokel sensibilities, right? The way she presents herself is like a real hardworking Michigander, a little bit of stick it to him, right? Like she does that as a deflection. She does that as a fucking deflection, dude. Straight up. She talks like she's a Youper, but she's from Rochester. I do not get it. Yeah, she's doing it on purpose. I think she's doing it on purpose where they're like, oh, everyone's clowning on her because she says, Matty Maroon. Okay? Here, look at this question. This, and then the other question about aid to Israel. Mill Hayes actually cooked her ass. Okay? Mill Hayes had two very good questions for her, and both of these questions were not fucking answered, and I don't think people are paying close attention. We're dropping the ball a little bit. I think more people, Mills Hayes, sorry. I think more people should pay attention to what Haley Stevens doesn't say, not how she says it. She wants you to pay attention to how she speaks. She doesn't want you to pay attention to the fact that she's not answering any fucking questions. Okay? Listen to this. Representative Haley Stevens responds to concerns over continued U.S. aid to Israel. In contrast to her position with Democratic primary opponent Dr. Abdullah Sayed, who has called for ending military aid to Israel.
Those people who are concerned about continued U.S. aid to Israel, what would you want them to know?
Well, I'm very proud that my constituent just recognized my support for Jewish Americans who feel very...
Boom, immediate deflection. Oh, well, it's... Well, Jewish Americans really like my position on this issue. What's your position on this issue? Didn't answer. Didn't answer what her position is. Didn't answer the question. What do you have to say to your constituents that are not supportive of your position on Israel, but actually have a very negative attitude about your position on Israel, considering that the overwhelming majority of your constituents want you to stop aid to Israel, which you voted against. You voted against the Massey Amendment this past week against the interest of your constituents who are overwhelmingly demanding you cut aid to Israel. What do you have to say to that? That's the question. And immediately she goes back to, oh, well, Jewish Americans feel some type of way. It's like, no, that's not true. That's not true either. Jewish Americans also want to cut aid to Israel. That's a fucking lie.
Very targeted right now, that anti-Semitism is rising. I didn't get a chance to ask him.
What the fuck does that have to do with conditioning aid to Israel? What the fuck does that have to do with conditioning aid to Israel? You still have not answered the question.
How he is doing. I'm going to go back and do that. We had a temple that was blown up by a terrorist.
What does this have to do with conditioning aid to Israel? Again, 3 talking points, None of it has addressed what do you say to your constituents? What do you say to your constituents who want you to cut aid to Israel?
Actor, and it's a tough time. And here in Michigan, we've got robust and incredible diversity. And my heart has gone out, and I've spoken out for the people of Lebanon, innocent people.
This question is not about what are your feelings about the victims of Israel. This question is, what are you going to fucking say to your constituents who don't want you to send aid to Israel, who are worried about your allegiance to the state of Israel? There's no answer here. And she does this all the time. And even I didn't realize that she was just constantly fucking avoiding these direct questions. She never answers direct questions. The first journalist, free ball for all the reporters out here. I know some of you are local, you're watching. I know some of you and your producers are in here right now. Free money for you, free ball for you. Get her on a single fucking issue. Get her on one thing. Okay? One thing. It doesn't matter what it is. If you can get her on Israel, excellent. Okay? One thing. Free money for you. Free ball for you. It will be great in your resume. Okay? She never answers questions. She never answers direct questions with a direct answer.
Lebanon, our incredible Lebanese American community here in Michigan. We've got remarkable business leaders, small businesses, several Lebanese American chambers here in Michigan, Lebanese restaurants who were standing.
I love eating. I love eating at Lebanese restaurants. Like, what the fuck? Why is she not answering the question? Answer the fucking question. I don't care if you love labneh and you prefer it to hummus. Why do we give a shit? The question is not about that.
Standing up alongside congregants of that temple, making sure that families had food. And I'm in the business.
Yeah, and the more she refuses to answer the questions, the more she fucking puts the twang in there, okay? Yeah, we've had Michigan food. Lebanon. The more she fucking runs away. You saw that TikTok? I know who you are. What TikTok? The more she fucking gets asked a direct question that she doesn't want to answer, the more she fucking goes, "It's the Michigan way! Vladimir Putin!"
Of bringing people together. The difference between me and my Democratic primary opponent, Abdul, is that Abdul refuses to acknowledge the two-state solution.
Yeah, and then he turns around and goes, Abdul, my opponent, Abdul. Yeah, she is. Brother, it just hit me. She's the Wisconsin woman, Boris Johnson. Yeah, she's doing the same technique that Boris Johnson expertly rode to victory. Boris Johnson went to the best schools in London. But he expertly presented himself. Admit you saw the TikTok? What is the what TikTok? What fucking TikTok? I don't know what you're saying. Just send me the fucking TikTok. Maybe I saw it.
Not only do I want safety in Lebanon and dignity for the people of Lebanon, I want that for Palestine. I want that for Gaza. I do not believe a one-state solution gets us anywhere closer to long-term peace. It is very clear that Mr. Net.
Are you saying Haley Stevens is akin to Boris Johnson? I think Haley Stevens is a lot smarter than she lets on. And this is an expert strategy for her to be like, I'm just a dumb yokel. Wow, look at me. Like, she literally uses this as a way, to never answer the question. And then people don't even fucking realize that she just danced around the subject. If she was like Pete Buttigieg, if she spoke like Pete Buttigieg, people will go, oh, I know what you're doing. You're fucking phony. Okay? This is a style. Okay? This is something that a lot of politicians deploy. Kennedy in Louisiana does this. Boris Johnson in England did this. George Bush II did this as well. I don't know. I'm kind of dumb. I don't know. Whatever. Like, this is a classic technique. Pete Buttigieg, on the other hand, cannot do it, right? Because his academic pedigree renders him unable to present himself like a fucking yokel. JD Vance is the same thing. He tries to do it and he fails to do it. JD Vance can't present himself like that because he's too Yale coded. Okay? So when JD Vance gets in there and goes, yuck, you know me, oh, my wife, sure. When he does that, when JD Vance does that, everybody goes, bitch, shut the fuck up. You went to Yale. You sound like you went to Yale. Stop doing this shit. Okay? Haley Stevens, on the other hand, is a very good politician. And I don't mean that that's a good thing for us, and that's not a good thing for Michiganders. Okay? She is capable of dancing around these issues, but people, when people watch her speak, okay? When people watch her speak, when people hear her talk, they're too focused on the accent, and it develops. It's a speech pattern that she deploys, in my opinion, to create this facade that she's just like the average person.
Across Michigan. I am trying to lead. I am trying to lead with consistency.
Like 2 minutes and 10 seconds, no answer to the fucking question. Here, let's look at this one. Again, Haley Stevens on Senator Bernie Sanders, Representative Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez campaigning in Michigan this weekend for her Democratic primary opponent, Dr. Abdul Sayed, in the U.S. Senate race. What do you have to say to the supporters? If you win, what do you have to say to the supporters of Abdul al-Sayed? Look at what she says here.
This rally tomorrow with Sanders and AOC for your opponent. There are a lot of people in the Democratic Party that are looking for that progressive kind of movement.
Yeah.
How would you try to bring those people in?
I'm just curious if, Mr. Sanders is willing to acknowledge the great work that I did.
What? How are you going to bring the progressives into your movement? If you win, how are you going to bring in the progressives to your movement? That's not an answer to that question. This is a real concern. This is precisely how Hillary lost Michigan. This is precisely how Kamala lost Michigan, right? By avoiding the progressive flank in Michigan, right? This is how Joe Biden won Michigan, by leaning in to the progressive forces. So it's a real concern. There have been numerous instances where Michigan is now, there have been numerous failures in the last decade that Michigan is now seen as a purple state when it's not supposed to be. It's part of the fucking blue safe haven, right? It's supposed to be a part of the blue wall. It's no longer a part of the blue wall because of this exact problem. So the question that was asked is very specific. What do you say? How are you going to bring in the progressives into your movement if you win? Her answer is, I'm just curious. Bernie never. What do you mean?
I'm just curious if, Mr. Sanders is willing to acknowledge the great work that I did alongside President Obama on the auto rescue. He had just himself gotten into the United States Senate, and I don't remember him being around for the auto rescue, but I certainly remember our sleeves being rolled up to save the.
That's not the question. That's your pitch. That's your campaign pitch. That's you attacking Bernie Sanders. The question is, how are you going to win over their fans if you win the fucking primary? Biden won Michigan? Yeah, I said Biden won Michigan by leaning into the progressives. Listen to my words. Hillary lost the progressive wing and lost Michigan. Kamala Harris never actually made an attempt to win over the progressives and lost Michigan. Joe Biden, on the other hand, what did Joe Biden do? Joe Biden ran a fairly progressive campaign. Pay attention to what I'm saying. Joe Biden ran a progressive campaign. He hugged Bernie. He hugged and kissed Bernie Sanders. So much so that Bernie fucking, rode for Joe Biden endlessly.
200,000 Michigan jobs to stand up for working people and to do the right thing. And I'm also really proud of the record that I have. I have been recognized as the most effective lawmaker for Michigan because I write laws and I pass laws and I make a difference.
This is not an answer. Do you want her to win? Stop giving her tips. Wait, what? I'm not giving her tips. The fuck? I'm unloading. I'm giving the journalist tips on how to ask better questions. Nail her on an answer. Ask her to actually give a clear-cut answer. Treat her like you would Abdul. Reporters never let their subjects get away with this level of deflection when it's someone who's an insurgent left candidate.
I'm not in the complaining class of pointing fingers. I'm in the class of winning tough elections, of making sure someone like Mike Rogers in the state of Michigan here, this is a toss-up race. It is not a guarantee. And this is why it's frankly been so important that, we go through a rigorous Democratic nominating process. We haven't seen Mike Rogers campaigning, but we have heard him saying that he wants to go to the U.S. Senate to rubber.
Yeah, there's nothing. No answer.
Of course, we do have this rally tomorrow with...
I've noticed that what gets lost in the yokel shtick is how much Haley Stevens actually avoids answering direct questions, whether it be Israel or even about winning over the progressives or even about courting the progressives if she wins the primary. Yeah, something that Kamala and anyway. What the fuck? It bricked my... She's Sarah Palin maxing? Like an expert politician. Centrists should know that Mike Rogers thinks Haley and Abdul are the same anyway. No, that's not a good talking point. That's actually a bad talking point. You don't want to fucking even bring up any similarities, whether it be from the opposition or anything at all. And it's not even true. Mike Rogers doesn't think Abdul and Haley are the same. Mike Rogers knows that Haley is easier to beat. Mike Rogers knows he has most likely no real shot at defeating any Democrat. But if it's between Abdul and Haley Stevens, I think there are some Republicans who do sincerely think that Abdul is like too radical because they're dumb fucking boomers and they don't know how to read the room in the same way that our dumb fucking boomers and the establishment Democrats don't know how to read the room. However, I would go so far as to say the smart ones, the smart money is that they actually do know that Haley Stevens is a easier candidate to defeat. But that's it. Anyway, that's all I got for today. 7 hours. I'm freaking tired, chat. That's all I got for you for tonight. I'll see you tomorrow as always. We're back. Here's the TikTok people claimed you saw. Okay. Well, why you got to do that right as I'm leaving too? Take a week off, bitch.